It's D-Day for these 11 couples. They're walking down the aisle for a group wedding in a public park. A pink and rosy affair that's been blessed by the Chinese Communist Party. In reality, these couples were all already married. The ceremony was staged, organized in the name of International Women's Day. A not-so-subtle attempt by local authorities to encourage young people to settle down and start a family.
It's important to set an example, because a lot of young people are afraid of marriage. In my opinion, and in Chinese culture, a girl really becomes a woman after she gets married, and then she understands what her role is as a woman.
The guests aren't the friends and families of the happy couples, but singles ready to take part in a government-sponsored speed dating event.
Each participant, men and women, will introduce themselves. Our aim is simple, for you to get to know each other.
Thanks to these icebreakers, authorities hope to boost the birth rate, one of the lowest in the world, and the number of marriages, which has halved in 10 years. The Chinese Communist Party is playing Cupid, trying to target educated women like Li Nan, an engineer.
I'm already 35. Personally, I don't mind, but at this age in China, I'm called Shang Nu, which means leftover woman.
Her parents urged her to sign up today and even came to observe her. They're very anxious about their only child's marital status.
In the big cities, young women are too independent. They behave as if they don't need anyone else. Our daughter thinks that if she's happy on her own, we'll be satisfied. But that's not enough for us.
A conservative vision, one that's encouraged by the highest levels of government. Women are increasingly excluded from places of power. For Xi Jinping, they must promote traditional Chinese virtues and sound family values and devote themselves to motherhood. It's a vision that has become impossible to criticize publicly. Like any social movement, feminism is severely repressed in China. In 2012, in the heart of Beijing, a handful of activists donned blood-stained white dresses to raise awareness about domestic violence. At the time, tactics like these were tolerated, but 3 years later, the activists were arrested the day before another public event. Their leader was under surveillance for a long time, and after years of intimidation, she left the country. In 2017, the Me Too movement briefly went viral on Chinese social media, but was quickly censored. Huang Xueqin, journalist and icon of the movement, has been in prison since 2021, accused of inciting state subversion. Feminists have been silenced. Talking about women's rights in China requires discretion. In the southeastern city of Xiamen, these comedians polish their scripts.
I haven't finished writing this part yet. It's about girls who lose their minds in relationships.
31-year-old Yilin has created a 100% female stand-up show.
I think you should describe and detail people's reactions even more.
It's a rare space where female comedians can speak out and help each other, even though their existence is still frowned upon in China.
When a girl's really funny, it means she has convictions, that she thinks for herself, and that's not really encouraged by society.
They choose their words carefully. As with all comedy clubs in China, every sentence must be submitted for approval with the Culture Bureau. These comedians are used to it.
Some of us express ourselves in a radical way, others less so. Each of us has her own style. And the advantage of being in this club is that if we face controversy online or we have problems, then we can support each other.
The censorship apparatus wants positive content with no mention of politics, sexuality or violence. Despite these limits, their 10 weekly shows are often sold out.
I used to want a big, strong boyfriend, but not anymore. Now I'm looking for a man who's a bit skinny, so I'm sure I'll be safe.
Feminist jokes have to be subtle, but for Yilin, they're necessary.
When we talk about sexual harassment or other difficulties that women have, like painful periods, going to the gynecologist, that creates empathy in the audience. In fact, women need us to speak up for them.
She grew up in northern China, a more socially conservative part of the country compared to her new city. Back home, she felt the pressure of gender inequality.
I come from a small town where boys are preferred to girls. People don't say it explicitly, but I feel the weight of tradition reflected in my parents' behavior, for example. Well, it's only my little brother who will inherit their house.
After a master's degree in finance, she worked for a few years at a bank. Then she quit everything to express herself creatively through stand-up. Her parents disapprove.
They're not happy that I'm a comedian.
Why is that?
Because, according to them, a girl should have a stable job and look after her husband and children. By their standards, that's the life of a happy woman.
Although she dares to criticize social norms, Yilin does not define herself as a feminist activist. To do so would put her at risk of police repression. Chinese feminists are very closely watched, especially when they form groups. We met a young woman whose identity we are protecting. We'll call her Edith. She tried several times to organize discussions in an online group. The topics were, for example, sexual harassment, male-female gender dynamics, or family pressure. But this was already too much for Chinese authorities.
We had a first meeting online, but the group was blocked without warning. Then we created a collaborative document, which was also suspended. Maybe because it contained sensitive words, maybe because someone reported it. We thought, wow, we weren't expecting such a reaction. We didn't think we'd done anything wrong.
Since the group was shut down, the police regularly call her in for questioning.
The first time they came to my house, I was scared when they knocked on my door. And even though that was 2 or 3 years ago, I still sometimes jump when someone knocks on my door. The last time I was summoned, I mustered all my contempt and disgust for them. I asked them, "Do you think your work is useful?" I hate having to censor myself. It makes me hate myself.
Despite being exhausted and isolated, Edith refuses to abandon her beliefs. She now wants to leave China.
I hope that by leaving, I'll be more free to bravely express my thoughts about society. I find that China is like a black box, disconnected from the world. We can't follow what's going on outside the country, and our stories can't be heard abroad.
Today, many feminist activists, like most Chinese human rights defenders, emigrate and live in self-imposed exile. They go to places like Japan, Thailand, the United States, or Canada. In Vancouver, 20% of residents identifies as ethnic Chinese. Chi came here 5 years ago to study and has never left.
It was difficult to adjust in the beginning, but right now it just feels more like home, mostly because we have community members around us.
The community, she mentions, is an association of feminist and LGBTQ activists of Chinese descent. Chi set it up a year ago.
What astounds me is finally having a place where I can express my anger and turn it into something concrete.
我也特别有同感，就是感觉之前积压了很多这种不论是政治抑郁下的无力感。
Together, they organized an exhibition about activists imprisoned in China. People like Huang Xueqian, the icon of the Me Too movement, or Jiang Jian, the Wuhan whistleblower. Visitors could write postcards in support of them.
We cannot let those who pave the way for freedom to be just trapped. There is a lot of fear and increasing fear, especially after the pandemic. And the political oppression and just the civic society has been more closed up.
A collective like this could not exist in China. And even outside China, these activists know that they can be watched, their relatives back home intimidated. For Chi, it's a necessary sacrifice.
We share a sense of forced displacement, so that many of us might decide to stay here because of the situation in China and the human rights conditions. So for us to have a safe space here and continue those discussions, continue the conversation that we couldn't have freely in China is important.
Although she misses her country, for the time being, she has no plans to return. She wants to continue building a Chinese feminist movement in Canada.